So guys, here we have Stanley Ako, actually. And Stanley, just by way of a quick background, I'll let him introduce himself, but we met about a year, might be 2 years ago now, and he did the program a while back. And he's one of like what I would call a success story, really, because interestingly, I remember when we met, if you remember during that program, was it an audit course or something?
Audit, ISO 27.
ISO, exactly. That's when we met. And, you know, shortly after we started working together. And it's just, for me, fascinating, really, to see that turnaround and see where you are now as to where you were before. If you can just start by telling us a little bit of your story, probably before you did the boot camp, what life was like during the boot camp, and then after, and then we can probably just take it from there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, for me, this is a great opportunity to be able to share this story. As you remember when we first met, there was one thing you said to me during the training session. You said, if you had known me before, you would have advised me to do the implementation certification first.
That's right. Yes.
Well, during the auditing one. So the reason I'm saying that is because obviously I was very confused at the time. I knew I wanted to get into security, and I didn't know how to.
Right.
So I just kept going. Every opportunity I had to learn something new, I was just learning, from penetration testing to vulnerability management, everything I was learning. And for me, that moment, it was great to meet someone like yourself,
right,
that already was in the industry, and you understood where I was coming from. So I'm just saying this because it will give a bit of context as to where I've come from and where I'm at right now. So that period when I was just so confused, and what you did was you gave me how can I even put it? You gave me some directions. You introduced me into actually working and implementing ISO standard, ISMS system, which again, it was something I was lacking. I had so much knowledge, but no hands-on experience.
Right.
Which gave me the confidence. I was able to now go into these interviews and speak in a language that they were familiar with and they also understood.
Right.
So for me, that opportunity was priceless. It just gave me so much confidence in approaching interviews. I'm not sure what challenges you guys are facing at the moment with getting into the industry. But I would say definitely you will gain so much confidence from actually getting the work done and, building that connection between what you know and how to get it done. And that was again the opportunity which you're able to give me during our training sessions.
Right.
Working with the charity organization on that project. And just to shed a bit of light, currently I work as a security governance risk and compliance specialist for Saudi Water. And again, the journey was not easy. I went into, from after the project with Toast, I went into security risk. And from then on, everything else has just been so much easy for me. Because again, my main challenge was the interview process, the recruitment process.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
It was very challenging. I remember we did this activity where you're asking me all these questions. You're trying to understand why I was looking to get into security and what you actually meant to me. And you were asking me these questions, and I was shying away from saying, you know what, I want to do it because of money. That was one of my reasons why. And I was shying away from that. And as the moment I said money, you said, why do you need the money? And I think that was when you found out that I actually have a daughter.
Yes, I remember. That's right.
Yeah. So for me, that moment was just a moment of realization for me. And that opened up my mind in a whole different way.
So I was new, right? So I'm in a boot camp like this, I'm about to get out. What would you say would be what I should focus on in terms of shortening my journey as much as possible?
In terms of from my experience, I believe, again, like I said, the challenge I had was having that confidence in myself.
Right.
And putting out I was going for interviews. It was almost like I was begging for the job. And that's what I was doing throughout. I just felt like I was begging for a job. And I needed that confidence to realize that I've worked hard and I deserve the job.
That's right.
So my advice is for you to find that confidence within yourself, whether it's to spend a bit more time preparing for interviews or just reading around the topic. Whether or not you have an interview, just keep reading around the topic just to build your confidence. And I think that's where the confidence comes from, you knowing and believing that you know. And yeah, that's what I would definitely give the advice I'll give out. Just surround yourself, speak the language, talk to people that are already in the industry, find yourself a mentor, someone that you can call up and ask questions from. You can ask them questions. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your.
It does actually. It does. What you're saying is, do as much as you can to make sure you've got the confidence. And I think the confidence comes from, being capable, knowing what you're talking about. And I would add to that and say, it's not that you need to know a little bit about everything. You just need to know a lot about something tight, some way, so you can go deep in a certain issue.
Absolutely. So focusing on, I don't know if you also remember this, they're asking me so many questions. I said to you, I've done this. I was pulling out all these massive books that I've been reading, and you're looking at me, you're like, I just felt like you just saw how confused I was at the time. And you just kept narrowing the topics down, because you can't become a master at everything. You have to just,
especially not at the beginning, not at that early stage.
Absolutely.
You want to know a lot about a little,
Yeah. One of the things I also got into at one point, I wanted to become a SOC analyst. Again, through the journey where I was so confused. I don't know if you're familiar with CyberJobs. No. Mm-hmm. They have all these courses that you can do and gain hands-on experience. And CyberJobs, yeah. And I was so excited, and I joined. They had this SOC analyst module, which had, I believe, a lot of different. So basically, it's just like a path to become a SOC analyst. And one challenge I did find with that, it was self-study, and it just caused so much more confusion for me. Because you're exposed to all this information and you don't know, you're bouncing from one piece of information to the next. It was just so confusing. Again, for me, it was the easiest way to get into security. And the path which I took worked very well for me.
So that was it for me, guys. Did you have any other questions?
Thank you. One thing I'd like to add, to get the job is one challenge. And the challenge after that is to keep the job.
That's right.
And so again, this is where having someone like, last week I gave you a call. Yeah. Because I was going through, I had some questions to ask.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So having someone that you can actually speak to is priceless. Someone that you can, if you're going through, maybe you've been given a task and you just don't understand, and whatever explanations are given you, you're still not understanding, and you don't want to come across like you don't have the level of experience that you've claimed to have.
Mhm.
You can always, talk to someone. Just go out there and do research. Don't be scared to speak to people. And I think that's what's going to help you keep that role.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. Totally, totally. I think being in the right community really helps, you know?
absolutely. Yeah,
It really helps because you can,
yeah.
and sometimes it's just a quick question. You've already got some competence anyway, so you're probably just
Mhm.
stuck on a certain issue. And when someone provides another way of looking at the same thing, it just all
Yeah,
makes sense. It's like, oh, okay,
yeah,
I just didn't
yeah.
look at it that way, and boom,
Mhm.
you move on, you know?
And same thing with the question I asked you last week. I
Right.
already had an idea what to do, but it's just
Sorry?
giving. I mean, same thing with the question I asked. I had an idea,
Yes.
but when you gave me the information you gave me, I was able to do it differently or look at it differently, which was
Right.
great.
Right.
It was challenging when I was very confused, but when I had a bit more structure and I knew exactly what sort of roles to apply for. I don't know, again, talk to you, testify. I was applying for jobs paying £80,000 per year. I was applying for jobs earning for, 100K. It was just the excitement because security, you can make so much money. And this is one thing Tog said to me. You know what? When you apply for those roles, the expectation is different. So when you go for the interviews, the questions they require you to answer as if you've had 100K worth of experience. So for me, that moment, I had to be more realistic and focus on the jobs that would. And I think my first role was 40K. When after the project we talked, so I channeled my energy in applying just for those roles that I knew met my level of competency, as opposed to aiming so high. And I think that made it so much easier for me to get into the industry. And now I'm in a position where I pick and choose what job to go for.
So that's exactly my point, you know. Take whatever you can at that lower level if you're just starting out, because
Yeah.
you're starting out, whatever the story is that you're selling. So you want an environment that would allow you to grow, that would allow you to become that real professional who you're going to be, right? But once you take it, you don't need to be there for that long. He was what, 8 months? I've had roles for like 4 months, 5 months, and you move on. And each time you change roles, this is actually funny, by the way, because it doesn't actually make sense, but it's very powerful. So the more different roles on your CV, the more experience they think you have, but not in terms of time.
Yeah.
So if you've got like 4 months, 6 months, 2 months, 3 months, you've got 5 companies. When they look at your CV and say, oh, he's been this, it almost feels as if you've got 5, 10 years, whereas it might just be 2 years, right? So don't feel as if just because you're taking something low for starters, it's going to be a long-term thing. That was just what I wanted to add there.
Yeah. Again, another thing that I was able to get support with and talks was the CV. I used to think I was an expert because a lot of my friends used to come to me for their CV. But when I went through my own CV with Talks, it just shed a whole different light on how employers look at CV. And another thing was job descriptions. I don't know if you remember, we went through job descriptions. Normally, I'll just, read through job descriptions like I'm reading a post on social media.
Right.
But I understood one thing. You really have to focus on what the company, basically they'll say everything on that job description. Everything that they require from you is on the job description. So you just have to really pay attention and use those objectives, those requirements from the job description to prepare for the interview. And again, like I always say, and I always say to everyone, that they just taught me how to prepare for interviews.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
again, just to add, with every experience I've had, and I became more confident when I moved on to the next job.
Exactly.
So even when I left, I was not honestly was not happy with work when I was working for LV. It wasn't the best experience with the management, and I didn't feel as confident as I should. I felt like I should have felt after the experience. But when I moved on to the next job,
Yeah.
it literally felt like I actually learned from LV, and now I'm becoming an expert when it comes to risk management, for example.
Right. Exactly.
And that's just how it gets. You just feel more confident every time you move on because you're learning without even realizing. And when you move, sometimes you move to a company and they are not as mature as the previous company. But when you're now talking, everyone is like, wow, I never thought of it that way. So that gives you that confidence. And
Awesome.
I'm sure we've all experienced that in our, current roles. I've always had risk with every role that I've gone into, for example, and the aspect of managing projects. So you've always had that similarities with the roles. And so, for example, with LV, I was managing their risk registers. So when I moved to currently now in um, Southern Water, more or less reviewing their information security management system. Again, I don't know if you're familiar with ISO 27001. It's a it's actually, it's a risk management sort of standard. So there's always that element of managing risk with every role I've done, even with governance.
Wow.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
guys, I wish you the best.
I'm sure we'll be in
Take
touch.
it.
Okay. Thank you.